business.
You know who's really happy today, by the way, or at least they should be?
The Mafia?
LSU.
I like my answer better, but go ahead.
LSU should be happy today because they are no longer the most morally corrupt athletic institution in the Southeastern Conference. That torch has officially been passed 2 states over to Tuscaloosa. Congrats, LSU. It is not you anymore. The jokes will now be directed eastbound instead of southbound.
Somebody just asked for a favor on the day of his daughter's wedding, and he couldn't refuse. What do you want?
Why do you bring this to me today on the day of my daughter's wedding? I know it's not exactly the line, but it's the sentiment.
Be a masculine child.
Oh, my. If you have not been following along today, there is a new layer to the Alabama baseball. We can now officially call it a scandal. I've hesitated.
Understandably so.
I said on Tuesday. I said yesterday as well. It doesn't feel like it is appropriate to, at this point, call this a scandal. It is not a gate yet, right?
Oh.
It is now.
Well, no, I'm saying, I'm speaking in past tense. I was saying on Tuesday and on Wednesday, it's not yet a gate. It has become a gate.
It is a gate. What gate?
It's very gatey.
Bet gate?
RTR gate.
Roll bribe.
Yes. Ba-boom.
Yeah. It's funny. Do you remember some of the comments that we got when we talked about this to lead the show on Tuesday?
Yeah, we had people defending Alabama, and look at you now.
Not just defending Alabama, but you guys are speculating, and nobody cares about this, and, you know, there was a reason that we were talking about it, and then there was a reason that we rolled it into a larger story. So fast forward 48 hours, and we still don't know what happened. But Alabama's head baseball coach, Brad Bohannon, has been fired. I talked with someone who today said that Alabama was kind of looking for a reason to fire him anyway, and this was convenient. And I said, well, they better be right. It's one thing
they were going to make the postseason.
Well, maybe. They kind of wanted to move on last year and didn't do it.
Who told you that? Greg Byrne? Who told you they were looking to fire him and now this was just Greg Byrne? Greg McElroy? What Alabama booster told you that story? They weren't looking to do any of that.
No, this was somebody in college baseball who knows that who knows the business pretty well. That Alabama was not particularly happy with Brad Bohannon and was maybe not looking for a reason, but open to a reason. My point was simply, well, they better be right, because if you go down the road of firing a guy for a gambling scandal tied to sports, you better have the goods, because otherwise Brad Bohannon's going to own like a piece of the university. Because his baseball career is over. And I don't mean his college baseball career. His baseball career is over. And we don't even know the details.
He may go to jail. If we want to connect the dots here and sort of see where this is leading us, it ends in prison.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, looking to fire somebody, maybe. You don't do it right now. Something happened. They found something. Something happened. And now that it's leaking to both Andy Staples and Kendall Rogers that no players are involved, the investigation is just focused on Brad Bohannon, they found something.
Think about that for a second. Think about it. You can explain away a player who made a bad decision and mentioned to a friend or a buddy or a relative a tip. You can explain away a player who got himself into trouble with a campus bookie giving a tip to try and clear his balance sheet. I'm not saying any of those things happened. I'm saying you can explain that. A sitting head coach in the Southeastern Conference? who publicly would say, well, I don't know anything about gambling. I don't even know how that works. And privately loses his job because of betting irregularities in the upper Midwest. I mean, get it out of the region of the country I'm in. Let's get this information to a...
Borky just inadvertently explained how Borky just inadvertently maybe just explained how big this story is. Andy Staples is covering college baseball today.
Yeah, the implication.
Andy Staples has probably not covered college baseball since he worked at the Florida Student newspaper back in the day.
The implications of this are far, far reaching. Again, it's still speculative, but they fired the guy, so they found something. A head coach at an SEC school. Maybe the biggest brand in the SEC. Doesn't matter. I mean, they're all huge, but at Alabama, a head coach at Alabama got fired today after a review went into gambling irregularities. That's what happened today. I feel like through all the craziness of, wow, can you believe it? People are missing that, like really not hammering that home that a head coach of an SEC school got fired today in connection to gambling irregularities.
So we're what, 2 years, not quite 2 years into widespread legalized sports betting across the United States, beyond Vegas and Atlantic City. We got it in Mississippi. 2 years, maybe 3. Hasn't been that long. I mean, this is still relatively new. Hey, Dad, how long have you been on
September of 2019 is when the national ban was lifted.
Yeah.
But then states had to start enacting laws, and Mississippi's triggered right away, but other states, it had to slowly unravel.
Yeah.
This is the first scandal that we've had. And of all places, college baseball. If you'd been taking bets, sorry for the example, on what sport would be the first to have a scandal related to legalized sports betting? And oh, by the way, the integrity monitor group that is in place, this is why they're there.
Yeah, they did their job.
It appears. It certainly appears so at this point.
Feel a little justification for us talking 2 days in a row about injury reports and competitive integrity? Because now you know why we've advocated for that. And now that we know that a coach was somehow involved, the SEC has got to do something drastic. You have to. You cannot just, well, they fired him and we're going to work on education to make sure that, no. Heads got to roll. And not just Bohannon's. You got to do something drastic. This cannot be seen as something that if you're sneaky, you can get away with.
Yeah, I mean, when you say heads have got to roll, I'm not sure who's getting fired at this point, but it's time to be aggressive in transparency.
Policies have to change. Punishment has to get doled out. And I don't think it matters or not, but this is the same athletic department that has had how many scandals since January?
Well, let's not do that yet. Because okay, Borky, let me go back to what you said just a second ago. You said heads have got to roll. Should Greg Burns? When you think about the year that Alabama athletics has had,
and it's May 4th,
what is the level of scrutiny that Greg Burns, who to this point has been one of the more respected athletics directors in the country, primarily because he has a dominant football program and he's had a really good basketball program and he's made some good hires, baseball notwithstanding. Should he be uncomfortable?
Man, since January, you had your star basketball player involved to some degree in a fatal shooting, another teammate get arrested on capital murder charges of that shooting, and another teammate present at the scene. that happened, although you didn't learn about the star player until weeks later being involved. During that season, after you find that out about the star player, they do the pat-down celebration and all that stuff, and your basketball coach says he was at the wrong place at the wrong time and all of those things that come with it. You had an incoming basketball commitment get arrested on marijuana charges, and he was had a gun with him. You had not the athletic director, but a step below him get arrested on domestic violence charges. It's all they are at this point, but still, that happened. And now you had to fire your baseball coach because he is connected to gambling irregularities involving his team. That is since January. It's May 4th. And may that be with you.
The arrest for the staffer was Matthew Travis Self, third-degree domestic violence, deputy director of athletics for compliance. He was the staff member that was, I don't know what the details are. But yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot that has gone on with Alabama athletics in a short period of time. And it feels like it's got to feel for Greg Byrne to some degree. Now, he would deny this. Like he's kind of spinning out of control a little bit. You know, it's been like a deal where you just kind of, you guide the ship. You know, you make big decisions when you have to, but generally speaking, you guide the ship that is Alabama athletics. But now the ship's got some holes in it. It's leaking some water in some different places. So what's the level of scrutiny for Greg Byrne all of a sudden? I asked that question before the break. What is it? What should it be? If Zach Selman, since he had been hired, had all of these things happen at Mississippi State, if Keith Carter had all of these things happened at Ole Miss between the first of the year and now,
probably gone. Both of them.
Why are we not talking about that with Greg Byrne?
I think I would sit here and say that both of them have lost control of their department and somebody else needs to lead it. That's what I would say. The only thing that can save Greg Byrne is the fact that football is still what football is. And that's all they really care about there at the end of the day. As long as Nick Saban's winning and Nick Saban likes him, are they really going to disrupt that? Maybe they do. But this still, even though it's been professionalized, is college sports, right? Brandon Miller and the other two teammates involved, Brad Bohannon, Nate Oates, all represent a university. This isn't the Saints, where Alvin Kamara still plays despite dealing with assault charges, because it's a professional sports team. And if he does get convicted, then he will face punishment by the league. But until that's done, because it's a professional organization looked at under a different lens. But if he does get convicted, guess what? He's getting suspended for a long time. So even he faces punishment for that. This is a college, a university, an institution of higher learning. And it's one after another after another. Gun violence, gambling scandal, and the handling of both of them happening at a university. The person in charge, even if it's quote-unquote not his fault, that's whose feet it lies under.
All right, so Donald in Oxford asked that question. He's like, what could Greg Byrne have done differently? Who could have done any better given the circumstances?
He could have suspended Brandon Miller, for starters. Could have made Nate Oates suspend Brandon Miller.
They didn't do that. They stood by him every step of the way.
Sometimes at the end of the day, you don't have the benefit of foresight, but the boss, the person who's in charge, has to be held responsible. I mean, if we wake up tomorrow and pick a random stock, it drops 100 points, and the company starts to flounder and go out of business, the CEO is going to lose his job. Why? What could he have done? Doesn't matter. Results are what matter.
I mean, if I sat here behind this microphone and used a bunch of bad language, F-bombs and stuff, started calling people names, using inappropriate words, Will East's day tomorrow is a bad day. He would have had nothing to do with what I said, but his day tomorrow is a really bad day if I were to do that. Because he is my boss. That's how it works.
Darren in Jackson says, a friend of mine just texted me and said not every coach can conduct himself above board and follow the rules to a T like Nick Saban does. Kyle in Hattiesburg sends us a message that simply says parole tied.
Oh.
Ooh.
Stuff.
This fall, like it or not, going back to the message from Donald in Oxford, this falls into the lap of Greg Byrne. And you say, what could he have done differently? Well, he could have demanded a culture within that athletics department that holds people accountable for wrongdoing. And that does the right thing, not just the thing that leads to more wins. And I get that that's, maybe not very common. But yes, Brandon Miller, that's and here's the crazy thing. And I know this, I guess, secondhand. People within the Alabama athletics department, within their communications department, within their senior staff on the athletic side, they believe they handled the Brandon Miller situation well.
What a bubble.
They believe they handled that the right way. Nate Oates got horrific advice, horrific direction from the communication staff at Alabama in how to handle all of that. Greg Byrne made bad leadership decisions in how the department was going to handle the Brandon Miller situation. Maybe they're overcorrecting here. Or maybe they're trying to make up for lost time. Let's get out in front of this thing and we'll kick Brad Bohannon to the curb. And we got to see. We got to see is more. These were the statements from Alabama. First from Greg Byrne, released a statement that said, quote, they had initiated the termination process, close quote, for, among other things, violating the standards, duties, and responsibilities expected of university employees, and that the university would have no further comment due to an ongoing review. Okay. What are those other things, among other things?
There's a lot of weight to those three words.
Greg Sankey said today, we are aware of reports related to the suspension of wagering Alabama. Hold on, I got to read that again. We are aware of reports related to the suspension of wagering on Alabama baseball games. We will continue to monitor available information and any regulatory activity. That quote yesterday from Greg Sankey. He said, together with our member universities, we will continue to emphasize the importance of regulating, overseeing, and providing education related to sports gambling activity.
When are the spring meetings in Destin?
3 weeks. Last week of May. Labor Day, or Memorial Day week.
There's so many more angles to this, too. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know if we have enough time in the entire show today, up against a guest anyway, but not only, what should Greg Sankey do? Should Alabama can get to play in the postseason this year? The whole season now needs to be questioned. Now, they're not particularly good, but still, you have to wonder. That you have to look at every game and every decision Brad Bohannon has made this season. You have to. You have to cross-check it with every bet that's all of that, and then also, who do they replace him with?
Oh, if Alabama gets kicked out, maybe everybody can get in. I don't know. It's going to be funny if State and Ole Miss both get in because Alabama doesn't get to go.
Should they be allowed to go?
I don't know. I feel like Ruxin in the league here. There's been collusion. This entire season is suspect. I don't know.
If no player had anything to do with it, then yes.
Yeah, that
would be an incredibly unfair punishment for a team if their coach was at some level involved in sports betting or providing information or whatever, fully knowing that it is blatantly and vehemently and unequivocally and without question against the rules at every level, then obviously he's got to be out. But I don't know that you punish the team for that. Yeah. That seems a bridge too far for me.
I think eventually the program needs to be punished in some way or somehow. The SEC needs to do something drastic.
Why does the program need to be punished?
Who else?
I call for a full investigation into all Alabama athletics, which should take a full calendar year. Let's just shut down the programs.
Sometimes it takes 5.
5 years? Okay. Football, basketball, baseball, nothing until we are convinced there's no problems, no shadiness.
You've got to, if you're the SEC, you've got to do something drastic. You have to. You can't just sit there and say, well, the coach is fired, so all good. You can't. You have got to make an example out of them. You have to. This cannot be, you simply cannot, as a league, have everybody else think they protected Alabama. They got caught with a coach somehow involved in gambling on his own team. And
you think this should happen at the league level, not at the NCAA level?
I don't trust the NCAA to get it right. I think the league can and would do it better and more efficiently. I think Greg Sankey needs to just take over making decisions and letting everybody else in college sports follow him, because everybody else in college sports would follow him.
I have a question. What would we saw what happened with basketball when they were ranked number 2 in the nation and how they handled things. What if Alabama was really good? What if they were number 2 in the nation in baseball right now? Are we hearing about this?
Yes, because it wasn't a decision to bring this up internally.
Yeah.
Alabama's hand was forced in this. It was forced by the Ohio Gaming Commission. The OCCC. What is that? The Ohio Casino Control Commission.
But are they firing Bohannon if they're number 2 in the nation, or are they just like, we're going to investigate and see what happens?
Yeah, I think once an entire state takes your games off the board and issues an edict that other states follow as well, that no bets will be taken on this baseball program, it's enough of a red flag that Alabama can't bury its head in the sand, even if they're really good.
Yeah,
you disagree?
I agree, but it's iffy for me.
Yeah, dude, how they got caught makes it impossible to ignore, I think.
The other thing is, it's baseball in Alabama. They don't care. I called Ryan Brown on Tuesday.
Who Brad Bohannon was today.
Yeah, you're right. I called Ryan Brown on Tuesday. I was like, hey, man, what are you hearing on this story? He's like, man, I've told you before, people here don't care about college baseball. He's like, I'm looking into it. He's like, have you heard anything? I'm like, I mean, a little, but not a lot. That's why I'm calling you, trying to gather information. They talked about it on their show today a little bit, but with very little information. Obviously, football is king of kings at Alabama. Basketball is a big deal at Alabama.
It is now, yeah.
Yeah, but aren't they the second most successful program in the SEC historically? Didn't we look that up one time?
And based on conference championships, yeah, but Florida does have 2 national titles.
They do. And so if you want to say not the second best, they're one of the 3 or 4 best programs traditionally in basketball in the SEC. And they'll tell you they don't really care about basketball till football is over. But, man, they roll 15,000 people into Coleman Coliseum on the regular. And so, pretty big deal. Baseball's not. They spent 30-something million on a stadium that people still don't come to. They've tried. They haven't been good enough in a really long time. Brad Bohannon was making $475,000 at Alabama. He was the second lowest paid head coach in the SEC, ahead of only Steve Beazer at Missouri. There is a new update in this story. David Purdom, who covers, say what? Were you just ready to move on?
Borky.
Oh, he just read it.
No. Borky just retweeted, and I just read what you're about to say, and that was my in real time reaction to it.
Oh, I thought that was oh my gosh, can we just move on? No, not at all.
No. Oh, no. We stay with this.
David Purdom is the guy that covers gambling at ESPN. And he has updated his story as he has several times since Tuesday. Alabama baseball coach Brad Bohannon was fired Thursday amid a widespread investigation into suspicious betting activity on the Crimson Tide's game against LSU 6 days ago. Not new information. Here's your new information. Sportsbook surveillance video indicated that the person who placed the bets was communicating with Bohannon at the time. Multiple sources with direct information about the investigation told ESPN. David Purdom, by the way, is likely not getting that information from Alabama.
No.
David Purdom has been plugged in to the sports gambling world for a really long time. That's coming from the investigation side, I'm guessing. Wait, what?
Yeah. That aside from the fact that is a shocking level of stupidity, makes you wonder why, What was he involved in that made him feel the need to do that? Because when you're making that kind of money, if you're responsible, you don't need to potentially commit crimes to get more.
Bet with your head, not over it.
So, what else? And we'll never. I don't think we'll ever know the answer to that. But what else was he involved in to feel the need to do that?
As a avid fan of The Sopranos and Goodfellas, I believe we can start putting some stuff together here. Allegedly, just speculation. Bohannon was in with some people he didn't need to be.
We got to be careful here. We got to be really careful.
I get that, but this is how these things work. This is how it happens. Because there's no other explanation. He didn't just do it for funds. He didn't say, I'm going to risk my career and possible jail time just so I can make a little extra scratch here. No. Not good.
A sitting head coach, less than 2 hours before game time, right? I mean, that's the timeline, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he knew if they were going to scratch their starting pitcher sooner. A sitting SEC head baseball coach was providing information to someone who was placing bets at a Cincinnati Reds game. Or at least at the Great American Ballpark, because there's a sports book inside that ballpark. Does the information that it doesn't matter. Never mind. It doesn't matter. It's a non-public tip. I mean, LSU was a minus 245 favorite in the game. Paul Skeens was pitching. They're probably winning that game regardless. But knowing that the best pitcher for the other team was not going, And they were starting somebody that had not pitched since March 16th, or who hadn't started a game since March 16th. That's valuable information, especially when it's non-public and the line had not had a chance to be adjusted to reflect it.
That, like we said at the beginning of the show, confirms why we talked about injury reports. That has to happen now. You have to do it. You have to. You can't let this happen again. You have to do this now because a coach is engaged in the practice. You have to do it. Or allegedly, a coach has engaged in the practice.
Now, look, there are certain things that an injury report wouldn't reflect. If they thought this guy was going to start until 2 hours before game time and he starts the process of getting loose and he's too tight to go, then you scratch him. That's not a violation of the injury report policy.
No, but once in the professional leagues, how they do it, once it is determined, immediately everybody has to know. The second it is determined, it has to be reported. So if 2 hours before the game, coach, I can't go, they immediately have to alert everybody involved, he can't go, once it is determined.
I'm going to read this again.
It's hard to fathom.
This is David Purdum's story at ESPN. Sportsbook surveillance video indicated that the person who placed the bets was communicating with Bohannon at the time. All right, so I'm thinking about, like, the movie Casino, where they cut to one of the shot of the wise guys upstairs who are watching video surveillance feeds, but just with much better technology now. So is this a deal where you've got a bettor who's holding his phone and his phone rings and he looks to see who it is and it says Brad Bohannon? And they're able to zoom in with the video footage to the point where they see that? Because how else would video surveillance indicate that the person who's taking the bets is talking to Brad Bohannon?
Does it have audio?
I don't know.
I mean, with what I don't know a ton about casino security, and maybe we could maybe you want to fire off a quick text to one of our friends at Pearl River Resort to ask them this, but I have to imagine they have cameras in such places that they can hear conversations. And you don't have any privacy in a casino. You give it up when you walk in the door.
Yeah. Man.
This is either something shady is going on or Brad Bohannon is the single dumbest coach in college sports. Those are your only two options in this situation.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean, there was a Memphis basketball scandal back in the early 80s involving Dana Kirk. I don't remember all of the details. I mean, there have been stories of fixing games.
Yeah, point shaving back in the day.
Oh, we had the Tim Donaghy story with the NBA referee years ago.
Could you imagine how nervous he was when Alabama started coming back in that game? Sitting in the dugout?
Like, what's going on here?
Maybe Mike in Oxford is onto something. Maybe Alabama got Brad Bohannon's phone.
You got it.
Or
do
just
we have another Hugh Freeze situation?
Or just pulled his call.
Do we have
records.
another coach who didn't use a burner?
But again,
well, couldn't you subpoena that? Because this isn't NCAA. This is different. Couldn't you get those without the opportunity to retract?
Why would you know he had it? You go buy a track phone, throw it away afterwards.
We're not dealing with the smartest people here, clearly.
I get that at this point, yes.
Brian on the C Spire text line says they must have known the person placing the bet was suspicious.
I think the bet was suspicious. If they bet 5 figures on a random college baseball game in Ohio, why? That is something that is immediately going to why is this bet coming in? This isn't like a Monday Night Football bet where 5-figure bets happen all the time. This is a random Friday college baseball game between 2 SEC teams being placed at a baseball stadium in Ohio. Doesn't make any sense.
You know David Purdum's going to get the number, too. We'll find out how much it was.
Yeah.
He'll get it.
Yeah.
Haven't they alluded to the fact that it was a 5-figure bet? I feel like I've read that in one of these stories.
But we'll get if he got the phone call, he'll get the size of the bet too. Only a matter of time.
I was told by someone in the sports gaming industry that them not having bet limits on college baseball is really stupid by the sports book.
For me to get enough of the story. I'm flabbergasted at the fact that an SEC coach, I know it's not football, but a head coach at an SEC school got caught essentially betting against his team, allegedly.
Got a text here. Alabama was throwing games and Mississippi State still couldn't sweep them.
but that, every single Alabama loss now has to be looked at thoroughly.
It's
personnel
suspect.
changes, lineups, pitching changes, phone calls, everything. All of it.
I remember that Thursday night. State played that. That was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series. The first game, Alabama, I think they got down 3-0 in the first to State. They only gave their starter 1 inning. I don't know if they were planning to do an opener or if he just got over his pitch count because he had State put some runs up in that first inning, and I don't know what the deal was. But I remember thinking, it's weird they just pulled him after 1 inning.
Every one of those questions that anybody has had about Alabama baseball this year now has to be investigated. All of them.
Is Richard doing our digging right now?
I think so.
Is he looking at That's good. We got real investigative journalism happening here on Sports Talk Mississippi.
I think
you don't get that anywhere else, folks.
No. But this is a good text, and I agree. He said, I was confused about the video surveillance detail from the report as well. We need some insider info about casino surveillance. Let's just put it this way. If you're at a sports book, don't allegedly try to use insider information to bet on a game when the information is not publicly known. Just don't speak that out loud when don't talk about committing possible crimes with your buddies.
Don't call the coach.
Yeah, that
in the casino.
Just don't
do it in the car.
Yeah. God.
Hey, I'll call you back. Walk outside. What's the deal? Okay, I'm going back in now. These guys are bad at crimes.
Katie says it would be hard to hear over all the slots. Oh, the sports books are closed off. Quiet
again. Not only that, these are casinos, man. They got money to burn. They have top of the line stuff. They if they want to hear what you're saying, they're hearing it.
Somebody says they can tell by the time of the call, phone call was placed in duration.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you know.
He's going to jail. He's going to jail.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. But no. Regardless of if we're going to say he had ties with the wrong people or he just decided out on his own, you can't do this. This is illegal. This is more than just I'm not coaching again. This is I'm going to spend a couple years with Prison Mike and the Clink with the Dementis.
Yeah. Jimmy tweets at us and says,
it's bad.
It's bad. And Jimmy says not having betting limits on college baseball might be stupid, but in this case, not having the limit exposed is an issue. If the person makes a $500 or $1,000 bet, no red flags. But it was a bet, a sizable bet that was flagged. That somebody earlier said that, I just hate Alabama. No, I hate what Alabama's coach did. The fact that, look, say what you want about Pete Rose, but if he exclusively bet on his team to win, that's a little bit different. This is a guy that allegedly bet on his team to lose. It has nothing to do with how I feel about Alabama as an institution. What this guy did is shameful. And the implications of that action are going to be far, far reaching. And now, man, all the past decisions are going to be questioned now, but for whatever it's worth, you're going to have people that are going to question these things in perpetuity now unless a hammer comes down, which is why I keep recommending that. You got to nip it in the bud right now. You have to end it.
Nip it in the bud.
You got to do it now. You have to end this now. You cannot let this be a prevailing thought or theme after games happen. You can't do it.
I still have the
our
question.
Special gambling correspondent, Richard Cross, has returned with new information. Go.
No, I got no new information. I still don't wonder how it's possible. Not how it's possible, but how you could justify if it's isolated to the head coach. And by the way, they made an assistant coach the interim head coach. So they don't think it's like the entire coaching staff. Yeah. How if it is isolated to the head coach, you could punish the entire team.
Maybe not the team, because if the players aren't involved, I don't think they should be. But the institution, you have to do something. And, that's why Greg Sankey makes $3 million a year, and that's why I don't. He's more equipped to make those decisions. The 19-year-olds don't need to be punished for their coach being an alleged absolute moron. But the institution, you can't let this slide. You cannot let Brad Bohannon be the only person that is punished in this. If you have to do the institution, especially with all the other stuff that's happened lately, do it. If it's withholding payouts from the league office,
do it.
Do it. However, you can send a message to the other soon-to-be 15 teams in the SEC that this will not happen again. You have to do it.
Oof, imagine if they just said, you're not getting your cut of the TV money this year. That $50 million, we'll split it up amongst the other teams. Ooh. You get nothing this year. That'd teach a lesson. Yeah, I mean, Alabama's a school that could live with it. They'd be like, well, that sucks, but we're going to be okay. But that would teach a lesson. I mean, it would definitely put the smaller schools in line.
We've had a handful of texts that have said this is lack of institutional control. I mean, lack of institutional control is a charge that comes from the NCAA. Is this an NCAA issue?
It should be.
Lack of institutional control. I mean, I understand it's an NCAA charge, but, if we just use the words, when you have a basketball program that's letting a guy connected to a murder investigation play without penalty, and now you have your baseball coach being fired and being involved in a possible illegal gambling scandal, your institution lacks some control over its athletic department. There's just semantics.
I agree with you. I mean, I agree that it appears that the University of Alabama Athletics Department, based on the last 6 months, or slightly less, has exhibited a lack of institutional control. But I don't know that that's punishable by the NCAA, especially in the current climate that we're in.
This should be like one of the few things they still are capable of punishing, right?
We get a message on the C-Spire text line that says gambling scandals will be the end of college sports. But see, I would actually push back on that. And here's the thing. If we are still in the environment where sports gambling is illegal, this could have still happened, but it would be happening in the shadows, and you wouldn't have sportsbook or casino surveillance video at the least. I don't know if there's audio tied to video surveillance or not. I do know that it is against NCAA rules to have any involvement whatsoever in sports betting. Every school in America tells its players and its coaches that you cannot be involved in sports betting at any period. At no level can you do that.
Every athletic, football building or whatever, there's posters and there's signage everywhere that says that's anti-gambling. It's everywhere. You can't possibly miss it.
I mean, on the walls in locker rooms in the men's room, you have two posters. One that talks about proper hydration and this is what your urine should look like, and the other that says you cannot be involved in sports betting.
Are you a bad teammate?
I'm not making that up.
Pee? No, you're right. No, it's 100% accurate.
Like there are, if you walk into a restaurant or a bar, they've got the advertising above the urinals, like the little plastic covered deal where they can slide a sheet of paper behind it and advertise a DUI lawyer or how to get your teeth fixed at the dentist or, who to call for a ride. In football locker rooms, they have those similar things on the wall. And one is a picture of the color of what your urine should be to prove that you're properly hydrated. And the other is no gambling. And it's not just no gambling, it's no involvement with any part of the sports betting process. It is an NCAA issue. I don't know if they'll get involved or not.
If they know what's good for them, they will.
And what we don't know is the why. Right? I mean, that's the biggest question in all of this. Why, Brad Bohannon? Why? Why did you do it? Outside the Lines, which is the news part of ESPN that we see on television, spent about 6 minutes on the Alabama baseball story today. And the host of the show had David Purdom on as a guest. And we don't have time to play all of the interview for you, but he did specifically, he read Greg Sankey's statement. And then he said to David Purdom, you have been in contact with the NCAA. Where do they stand on this story as it pertains to Alabama? Here's what David Purdom said.
Yeah, the NCAA is aware of the issue, and they were very adamant about how seriously they take sports betting and the dangers that it poses to its student athletes. So they're following up with everything, and they're on top of everything. I understand that they're part of the lead of the investigation.
So there you go. Now, the idea that the NCAA is on top of anything, that strikes me as a little bit, oh yeah, okay, sure. Like they've been on top of everything else that they've done. But it is a new day at the NCAA with a new leader. And the fact that the NCAA is involved in this, not to mention gaming regulators and sports gambling integrity monitors, and they're not going to treat the NCAA, or at least I don't think they will, the same way that the feds did during the basketball, where they won't turn over information. I would think that these are groups that would work with the NCAA because it's all about integrity and transparency and making the legalized sports betting industry needs confidence that you don't have. How am I trying to? I'm trying to say this. They cannot have in the legalized sports gambling world even the threat of impropriety. It's got to be on the up and up. And so I would think that they would work with the NCAA. I would think.
Yeah. They should. Now,
Yeah,
but
they should.
If the NCAA, there's been so much momentum to basically disband the NCAA. And even with the new leadership, I still can't help but wonder if Greg Sankey, when he sits in his office every day, thinks, I could do it so much better than them. And he looks at the Big Ten and how they negotiated their TV deal and looks at how he negotiated his TV deal and then watches the NCAA throw hundreds of millions of dollars out the window because they're bad at negotiating and wonder, we'll be better off. But if you're the NCAA, you can't govern pay-for-play anymore. It's done. State law has superseded that. But everybody agrees that gambling, getting involved with the outcome of games is wrong. You had debate over players should get paid or they shouldn't get paid. Or, wait, you're really punishing a school because a couple Tennessee players went to a cookout? Ohio State players sold their own stuff and a coach got fired for it? That's stupid. That doesn't make sense. when it comes to this, everybody's in lockstep. Can't have that happen in sports.
5 NFL players at the end of April were suspended for violating the NFL's gambling policy. Jamison Williams, Stanley Berryhill III, Quintez Cephas, C.J. Moore, and Shaka Toney all suspended for gambling.
On
The
other
Detroit
sports.
Lions were hit the hardest. 4 of their players were banned.
Yeah, some of them were on other sports.
Doesn't matter.
The ones that got the year-long suspension were on football, not on Lions games.
Yeah.
Calvin Ridley was hurt. Not what was it? It was Ridley, right? Got suspended for a year.
Yeah.
Did a little parlay.
Yes.
He wasn't even playing. He wasn't even playing. He was injured.
Mm-hmm.
Did a little parlay. Suspended for a year. And people made fun of the NFL. Those people were wrong. That is the right decision.